Leisure activities and hobbies are a common way for every one of us to relax and recharge their batteries, but not all hobbies are similar and certainly not all of them cost the same. While most of us would be happy with a bike ride on a trail through the woods at the weekend, or a ski trip to Austria, rich people have to have their yachts. Okay, maybe not all of them, but in general their leisure activities and sports are a little bit more different than those of common people. Some are into extravagant hobbies such as collecting classic cars, or giving yacht parties in the Caribbean, others love playing golf, and some will happily give money away to charities, trying to make the world a better place for the not-so-lucky among us. But let's not judge a book by its cover and better find out more about what do the wealthiest people on the planet love to do with their free time. For that matter, we've done our homework, made a little bit of research and comprised a list of 15 favorite hobbies of the richest people in the world. So let's get started. Number 13. Golf. Boring for many, calming for others, golf is one of those sports favored by a lot of the rich and famous. From actor Clint Eastwood to Donald Trump, many wealthy people have no problem paying the sky-high fees of some of the most exclusive golf club memberships in the world. And when we say sky high, we mean tens of thousands of dollars for joining. Anyone can find a golf course for short weekend fun, but few will seek out the best courses in the world and sustain all the costs this hobby requires. Number 12. Polo. A gentleman's sport, and one especially appealing to generations of royal families. Polo comes as a no surprise on this list. It's the classic game of the wealthy and sophisticated, and a nonetheless expensive hobby. Polo requires a certain degree of erudition, higher than most other common sports out there, and not only that but plenty of money, since buying and owning a horse and paying for full membership in a polo club isn't even close to being cheap. Number 11. Hunting. Hunting may seem like your ordinary hobby, since there's nothing fancy or expensive about being out in the woods, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Hunting can get pretty expensive really fast. Depending on the country, owning a gun may already be a costly business. Then add in the costs of hunting taxes and expedition expenses and your wallet will start emptying quite fast. In addition to that, if one wants to hunt something more exotic, like a big game in Africa, well, that will skyrocket the costs to heavens. Number 10. Reading. We're not sure if the richest people in the world read because they have time and money, or they have time and money because they read. But reading is indeed one of the favorite hobbies of some of the wealthiest people on the planet. While reading isn't necessarily an expensive hobby, that unless you're building yourself a huge library, it's one that develops good thinking, and good thinking is a necessary skill in the world of businesses and fortunes. Number 9. Philanthropy. Philanthropy is probably one of the most common habits of rich people. Some sources claim that over 50% of the richest people in the world commit to charitable causes. You've surely heard about many charitable foundations around the world, foundations started by some of these wealthy people. The reasons behind this hobby may be very subjective, some even pointing to the psychological need of feeling good about oneself, but we have to admit that philanthropy requires a great deal of money. Money which the rich and famous have, and are willing to give away. Number 8. Sailing. Another fine sport that sits between unaffordable and very unaffordable is sailing. From renting small sailing ships to owning big fancy yachts, sailing is a sport mostly available to the rich, and many famous names such as George Clooney are among the lucky ones who are doing it as a hobby. While sailing is a noble sport, owning a yacht and partying in the Caribbean with all the fine ladies dancing on the deck is less on the sports side and more on the hobby side, but extremely expensive nonetheless. Number 7. Race car driving. For those rich and adventurous souls who need adrenaline pumping through their veins, driving a race car is the hobby to have. Getting a few laps on the racetrack in a super fast high-performance machine may not make one happy, but for sure it will add a lot of excitement to their lives. On the other hand, though, this hobby will draw a lot of money from their wallets, because only a few minutes on the racetrack can suck up to $1,000. And everybody wants more than a few minutes of sheer joy, don't they? Number 6. Owning collections. From art pieces and antiques to watches, jewelry, and classic cars, collecting is a hobby in itself. While this isn't necessarily an expensive hobby reserved only for the rich, sometimes it can become one. You could collect post stamps, or you could collect classic cars and World War II warplanes. But once you start with it, finding more and more high-value items will make you push this hobby farther and farther into the expensive side. And that's where things begin to get really interesting. Number 5. Equitation. One of the favorite pastimes of the world's wealthiest people, equitation is becoming more and more common. But owning a horse is not simple and definitely not the cheapest hobby at all. That's why it's a lot more common for the top earners to get into this hobby compared to the usual folk. Number 4. Winemaking. Fine wines are something almost every rich person in the world has tasted, but for some of them, that's not enough. Growing a vineyard and making wine for themselves is yet another habit of some of the wealthiest people in the world. It's not uncommon for villas belonging to famous people to have wine cellars and wineries, and certainly is not too hard for them to make their own wine. Number 3. Running. While a lot of people in the world consider running and fitness in general a hard thing to do, most rich people consider it a healthy habit. And they usually stick to it, no matter if they're actors playing roles in which they need to be in top shape or just businessmen in need of a healthy mind and body. And running certainly isn't on the expensive side of most of the hobbies we presented here. Well, that if you don't want to own a fully equipped top-notch gym. Number 2. High-altitude mountain climbing. While almost all sports had a utility in the past, climbing mountains had none. It was something invented by nobles to separate themselves from the rest. Today, more and more people embrace hiking, trekking, and climbing as exercise, but high-altitude mountain climbing has so far remained a thing for the rich. Climbing some of the most famous summits of the planet comes with great costs, and we're not talking about the possibility of injury or even death. We're talking about money. A whole lot of them. Climbing Everest nowadays can start somewhere at $35,000 and get well over $100,000. And there are lots of high peaks out there for which the taxes for trying to reach the peak rise higher than the peaks themselves. While there's no real utility into trekking for extended weeks, depriving the body of the much-needed oxygen for extended periods of time and reaching a high peak after spending loads of money on gear and supplies, there's something very alluring to that kind of adventures. Something not many people can afford. Number 1. Traveling. Traveling is becoming ubiquitous. The cost of transport is diminishing as technology is evolving, and vacations are getting cheaper and cheaper, but there still aren't too many people who can afford more than a few weeks of traveling every year. But the richest people in the world have both the time and the means to spend months on end traveling, so this is a hobby in itself. First-class airline tickets, exquisite destinations, and ostentatious hotel rooms are just some of the perks of traveling around the world the way rich people do. So, that's it from our side. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more great content like today. We hope you enjoyed our video and we will see you next time.